So for all those who've been following along for stimulus news, first off, thank you for subscribing and liking the video. And for all of those people, let me tell you, we have some good news and some bad news. Good news is that the House of Representatives just last night passed the HEROES Act, an act that I talked about in my previous video, which is jam-packed full of additional stimulus bill measures, including stimulus checks for individuals, and expansion of the unemployment insurance benefit. Bad news is that not everything was included in that bill that a lot of people would like to see included, and there's a lot included in that bill which might slow it down and make it less likely to actually pass the Senate and be signed into law. I'm going to be breaking down the HEROES Act, its passage, and what it means for you in this video. I'm going to tell you what's in the bill, what I think will ultimately come out of this bill once it's revised and changed in the Senate, and whether or not I think it'll actually pass. And here's a hint. I think that something along the lines of the HEROES bill is almost certainly to pass, and I'm going to prove it to you with some evidence later in the video. So my name is Kevin Conway. I make personal finance videos like this one all the time, and I give updates to the stimulus bill news. So if you want to stay informed, be sure to subscribe to the channel and give a quick like to the video if it helped you out in any way. Now let's get right into it. So what is the HEROES Act? Well, it really is a stimulus bill round 2, and it contains a lot in it. It's 1,800 pages, so let me just save you all of that detail and give you what you really need to know. First and foremost, in this bill includes an additional $1,200 stimulus check for individuals, calculated in the exact same way as the CARES Act. That is, if you make $75,000 or less, or if you're married filing jointly, you make $150,000 or less, you are entitled to that full $1,200. Now here's where it's a little different than the CARES Act. For people who have dependents, now you can actually get $1,200 per dependent, which is different in two ways. Number one, it's $1,200 versus the $500 in the CARES Act. And number two, who qualifies as a dependent under the HEROES Act is different than under the CARES Act. In the HEROES Act, you're limited to 3 dependents, but they could be of any age. They could be 60 years old, they could be 17 years old. It does not matter. They do not need to be one of your children under the age of 17, like the CARES Act. So what else is in the HEROES Act? Well, in this bill includes an expansion of unemployment insurance benefits all the way until January 31st of 2021, as opposed to the July 31st, 2020 cutoff date that the pandemic unemployment insurance terminates on according to the CARES Act. This bill actually extends that $600 per week that you're entitled to under that pandemic unemployment insurance framework all the way until January of next year. In the HEROES Act also includes $200 billion of hazard pay for essential workers. There's also $1 trillion for state and local governments to plug their budget deficits. And yes, 1 trillion with a T. I know it's almost incomprehensible, but I guess those are the numbers that we throw out nowadays. There's about $175 billion for mortgage and rent relief in the HEROES Act. There is the elimination of the state and local taxes deduction of $10,000. That is eliminated. Now you can write off any amount of your state and local taxes against your federal tax burden. There's additional money for the post office. There's an increase in SNAP benefits. There is regulation on mail-in ballot voting in this bill. Frankly, there's just a ton to this bill, but really you don't need to know most of it. The key things I already covered. And be sure to comment below whether or not you think the HEROES Act is a good idea and what you would like to see in the final version of the bill. Now, with all of that being said, let's talk about what's not in this bill. What is not in this bill is any recurring stimulus payments of $2,000 per month. Some of the things that were covered in the Emergency Money for People Act or the Automatic Boost to Communities Act. None of that made it in the HEROES Act bill. What does that mean? That one-time stimulus check that you got in the CARES Act will be replicated in the HEROES Act, but it'll not be an ongoing thing for you to receive. Additionally, there's nothing like a paycheck guarantee, which was a proposal a couple days ago that was brought up, which was actually pretty interesting because an economist from Moody's determined that it would actually cost less to implement a paycheck guarantee for those individuals who made up to $90,000 a year than it would be to pass any of these bills, by an order of magnitude, as a matter of fact. And so that's where we are today. The House has passed the HEROES bill, but does it actually have a chance of making it into law? Well, here's my opinion. I think that the House passing the bill is a major step for getting another stimulus bill ultimately passed, and here's why. The House was the original body that passed the HEREOS Act, which ultimately, obviously, came and passed into law. Furthermore, the White House has stated that they would like to see some provisions of the HEREOS Act actually passed into law. And now this may strike people as a little bit surprising, but specifically, they said that they would like to see additional direct cash payments to individuals. So that means additional stimulus checks for Americans. And so even though the Senate has said that they are not going to pass the HEROES Act whatsoever, I think the HEROES Act is really going to be a starting point of negotiations for politicians to get together and actually come to an agreement on certain things that they want to pass. And I think direct stimulus checks, additional stimulus checks, have a very high likelihood of passing. Furthermore, we're in an election year. November is coming up very, very quickly, and politicians left, right, and center are going to be up for election. And if they pass something that was very, very popular, direct stimulus payments to individuals, then they are certainly going to boost their case for re-election. And frankly, everybody is human to a degree, and everybody would like to be re-elected. So I think there is a lot of incentive for a lot of these people to actually go and vote yes on a bill that includes direct stimulus payments to individuals. Do I think the HEROES Act, as it stands today, is going to pass? Absolutely not. I think it certainly is going to be modified and changed dramatically before it actually passes. But I think that what remains is going to be something that ultimately is very popular. And with unemployment at 14.7% and likely significantly higher than that, everybody is going to want to see additional stimulus to the economy. The Federal Reserve and politicians and economists have all been very clear. If we do not do something in a dramatic fashion, we could be looking at the next Great Depression. Now, I'm not an economist at all, but I do read the news and I do understand that people all are almost universal in their opinion that we are in a very tough economic time. And I think it's natural to want to pass a law that is going to give stimulus in a time like this. So what do I think will ultimately pass? I think there are 4 key things that have bipartisan support, which have a very good shot of passing. Number 1, as I stated earlier, direct payments to individuals or stimulus checks round 2 have been clearly stated on both sides of the aisle as being something that is not only on the table, but most likely going to happen in some form or another. I think those additional stimulus checks will follow almost identically to what was already passed in the CARES Act, but additional provisions will be made, such as those with Social Security or veterans benefits for disability. They probably will have automatic distributions of the stimulus checks to their accounts, something that wasn't really happening in the CARES Act and left a lot of people, even today, not receiving their stimulus checks. I think some cleanup provisions like that, but I think the dollar amounts and the qualifications will remain the same. Because frankly, the economy is now worse than when they originally passed that stimulus check bill, and that passed with both sides of the aisle agreeing. Number 2, I think that we are going to see an expansion of unemployment insurance benefits all the way until at least later in the year or likely the beginning of next year, something that is already in the HEROES Act and something that isn't without precedent. What do I mean by that? Well, in the Great Recession, we actually expanded unemployment insurance benefits multiple times over the years as the economy was still in a big rut. And as economists come out today, they think that we're going to have a swoosh-shaped recovery, not a V-shaped recovery, and we are going to have a much longer and more prolonged recession. I think it's inevitable that we're going to see an additional passage of unemployment insurance benefits for a longer period of time. The only thing I think could possibly change with these unemployment insurance benefits is that they may be reduced in some way. For example, if you made more on unemployment insurance benefits versus working, I think perhaps the Congress can actually add a provision in there to take the lesser of the 2 amounts, whatever you were making before and whatever you'd be entitled to under the new unemployment insurance benefits. But that's just a guess. I think that has a strong chance of passing. Number 3, I think that we could see a payroll tax credit of some sort, and specifically a payroll tax credit for employers that actually operate in essential businesses. This would be very popular on both the right and the left because we can all get behind the idea that certain essential workers, grocery store workers, nurses, people who work in positions where they are exposed every single day to the virus and other maladies as well, need an additional stimulus that is direct to them. And I think a payroll tax credit is the way to do it. And this has support on both sides of the aisle. In the HEROES Act is actually $200 billion for essential workers. And previous to the passage of this bill in the House, the Senate had actually introduced a bill that would give a payroll tax credit for essential workers that I've talked about in my previous videos. Remember, we are in an election year, and basically everyone can get behind the idea that essential workers need additional support, and they were frankly left out in many ways in the CARES Act. So passing something that would give direct relief to them would certainly be very popular. And number 4, I think this is probably the least likely to happen, but I could definitely see something along these lines happening: a direct aid to states via a loan from the federal government to shore up states' finances. Now, I'm going out on a limb here, but I think a program like this would occur, and here's why. States right now actually do draw loans from the federal government to cover shortfalls in their unemployment insurance benefits. As a matter of fact, a few weeks ago, California did just that. Politicians on the left side of the aisle have actually wanted to give direct aid to states to shore up their budgets, but politicians on the right side of the aisle do not want to give direct aid to state coffers. Meeting in the middle and having a loan that must be repaid back, but at a very favorable or 0% interest rate, I think could be something that could happen. But all of this, of course, is speculation. I want to hear what you have to say in the comments below. I want to hear your ideas, and I want to hear your opinions on the economy. So be sure to leave a comment below. And with that being said, I will be sure to update you if the HEROES Act passes the Senate or if it modifies in such a way that passage is inevitable. So be sure to subscribe to the channel to stay up to date on the latest stimulus bill news and other personal finance matters as well. My name is Kevin Conway. I'll see you next time. Thanks.